Chapter 11 of Gaston Ledford goes into the comparative designs. These are actually pretty common in our field. We often look at two different interventions or two different, slightly different things and compare the two to see which is more effective. Um, Gaston Ledford on 284 gives a definition of comparative designs, designs that allow researchers to compare two different interventions to determine which is more effective or efficient for changing a behavior of interest. So this is when we're looking at two different things and trying to figure out which one's best. So comparative design features. More than one type of design can be used. We have to consider the type of behaviors we're targeting, the time available for the study, the number of participants, and likely threats. And that will help guide what type of design, comparative design, we'll use. So table 11.1 in Gaston Ledford gives a really quick summary of the designs and how they relate to those key features that I just mentioned. So check that out. It will help if you are thinking of implementing a comparative design. It will definitely help guide that. Another key feature of comparative design, we use multi-dependent variables is recommended. And then we also use sensitive and appropriate measures on procedural fidelity. A lot more mistakes can happen when you implement a comparative design, so we really want to make sure that procedures are followed with fidelity. So we have to use very sensitive and appropriate targeted measures for that. Multiple studies are typically completed with comparative design in order to show that there's a proven winner between the two interventions. We typically replicate this design often often prior to determining the best intervention. Typical threats to internal validity, those are listed through pages 288 through 292. They also provide visual data and analysis examples. I think those are really important to take a look at. So throughout 288 to 299, definitely look at their visual analysis examples. But typical threats to internal validity include multi-treatment interference, non-reversibility of effects, and separation of treatments. Again, Gaston Ledford goes into much more depth on each of those, but those are the three that you should think about in depth when we talk about comparative design. When and why do we use comparative design? So typical implementation surrounds when we want to compare a new study or to compare a new study to an established study, compare variations in an intervention, compare contextual variables, or compare an evidence-based intervention to quote-unquote a fad intervention, so a trend or something that's not evidence-based at this point. So oftentimes we will use that in the field of ABA, especially compare variations to an intervention, so slight changes in an intervention that may produce a better result. Contextual variables as well, so that basically means like environmental changes, things in the environment that may impact interventions slightly. Different types of comparative designs. Gaston Ledford describes them in quite a bit of detail. He gives procedural guidelines to each, threats to internal validity to each, advantages and limitations. We'll quickly go over 4 of them. So there's multi-treatment designs, which is basically a sequential introduction and withdrawal design. So BC is the simplest form. You can then advance that to ABC. That demonstrates an experimental control between conditions B and C, but not in regards to initial baseline. The most well-rounded package of multi-treatment designs would be ABA, BC. That will give demonstration and comparisons information, and both of those can be proven. The next type of design is alternating treatment and multi-element designs, which is basically rapid and repeated manipulation of at least 2 conditions. We use this for reversible behaviors. And typically in the field, this is done using a functional analysis. So when we're trying to implement a functional analysis, a lot of times you'll use an alternating treatment or multi-element design. Um, and it targets, assessing factors of targets assessing factors maintaining challenging behaviors. So really that FA. So when we are thinking about an FA and changing conditions between maybe the play condition and the attention condition, and doing rapid and repeated manipulation of both conditions. So that's what in practice an alternating treatment design would look like. There's also an adaptive alternating treatment design, which is similar. However, this is on non reversible behaviors, and it's typically targeting instructional strategies um, during different behavior sets or chains. It basically compares the efficiency of instructional strategies. And then the last one is parallel treatment designs. This is two concurrently operating multiple probe designs, and this targets non-reversible behaviors. Again, Gaston Ledford will give you procedural guidelines, threats to internal validity, advantages, and limitations. You should be familiar with all of those for the final.